Tonight we travel far from the screen glow and city noise. You're deep in the forests of Bohemia, in a world where the sun is still the best alarm clock, and your pillow is, well, not really a pillow. It's the early 1400s, and you're a peasant, a small dot in a world of taxes, toil, and turnips. The air smells of smoke, wet bark, and hay. You stir under a threadbare wool blanket, stiff from dried sweat and straw dust. The rooster is screaming again. Maybe it's dawn, maybe it's just showing off. Either way, your eyes crack open, adjusting to the cold gray light filtering through wooden slats in the wall. The floor beneath you is hard-packed dirt, and something probably alive just scurried past your foot. And yes, you'll be walking barefoot again today. Your only shoes are stuffed with straw and still frozen near the hearth. Good luck. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And I'd love to know where you're listening from and what time it is over there. Just drop it in the comments below. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You reach for your rough linen shirt, folded neatly next to a wooden bowl of rainwater. Neatly is a generous word. Everything smells faintly of smoke and sour goat milk. As you dress, your knees creak like they've already done a full day's work. You're 16, by the way. That's pretty much middle-aged. Your parents are already up. Mother hums as she tosses dried peas into a pot, the fire hissing below. Father is fixing a bent iron hoe with a scowl. A pair of geese waddle in the corner like they own the place. They probably do. You live in a one-room cottage with your whole family, 3 generations stacked like pickled cabbages. There's your older brother, who snores like a drowning ox, and your baby sister, who might grow up without ever owning a pair of shoes. You love them, mostly. Outside, the world is coated in frost. The village is quiet, except for the occasional dog bark and the sound of buckets clunking into the communal well. Your breath mists as you step into the morning. The mud sucks at your toes, and your fingers ache before you've even touched a tool. Historians still argue whether peasants of your era were truly miserable or just permanently annoyed. What's certain is this: you have work to do. Today's job is simple. Gather firewood, fix the fence, check the snares, and maybe, if you're lucky, poach a rabbit without being caught by Lord Benish's men. You know, a relaxing morning. You shuffle past neighbors' huts. Smoke curls from chimney holes. Someone's already yelling about stolen turnips. Someone else is feeding beer to a pig. You nod solemnly, as if this is completely normal. It is. Near the forest edge, you pause. It's quiet here, the kind of silence that feels ancient. You kneel and check your snares, just a few loops of string tied to branches. One is triggered. Inside, a fat hare blinks at you like it's above all this. You smile. Breakfast just got 300% better. Of course, that hare technically belongs to the local noble. Everything does. Your field, your hut, probably even your sense of humor. But if Lord Benish asks, it found you in your pocket. Back home, you skin the rabbit with a dull blade, while your mother seasons the stew with salt she definitely didn't buy legally. Salt is taxed like it's made of gold dust. You eat in silence, slurping thick broth, the rabbit tender and gamey. Your grandfather tells stories, his memory fading, his voice cracked like old bark. He claims he once met a traveling musician who taught him how to flirt with noblewomen using only 3 words: bread, horse, and please. I'm pretty sure he made that up. And while it sounds quaint now, these family meals are sacred. They're rare pauses in a world built on motion, digging, carrying, scraping, and sweating. Even hunger is predictable. Comfort, not so much. After the meal, you sharpen tools near the fire. The hearth is the soul of your home. It's where you cook, dry herbs, and argue about which saint helps with toothaches. Hint, it's probably Apollonia, but you're not sold. You remember when the priest said fireplaces keep away evil spirits. That checks out. Nothing evil wants to live in this drafty mess. Outside, children play with sticks and frozen clumps of myrnir. I used to join until I sprouted armpit hair and had to learn real work. One kid breaks into a song about the village idiot falling in the well again. Classic. As twilight rolls in, you light a tallow candle and patch a hole in your tunic. It smells like rancid beef, because it is. There's a knock at the door. Your neighbor, Jacob. He's smiling too wide. "You hear?" he asks. "The priest says the bishop is visiting next week. Maybe he'll bless the well." You nod, pretending that sounds exciting. Last time the bishop came, he drank all the ale and left with 3 chickens. Still, it's an event. You consider cleaning your shirt. Jacob leaves whistling a tune that'll be stuck in your head until spring. Night falls early in Bohemia, and stars scatter like spilled grain across the sky. The wind howls outside, and you burrow into your blanket, muscles aching. Somewhere wolves cry in the forest, or maybe just the neighbor's baby again. You close your eyes, not to dream, those are luxuries, but to rest. Tomorrow is already waiting.
The sun isn't even up yet, but your legs already are. You roll off your straw pallet and greet the world with a groan. Your spine cracks like firewood and your breath fogs the air as you shuffle toward the door. Outside, the horizon blushes faintly with light, the sky bleeding cold silver across the thatched roofs. Today, like most days, is for the fields. The wooden plow is right where you left it, leaning against the fence like a moody teenager. The ox, whose name is something between a grunt and a sigh, looks at you like he'd rather be literally anywhere else. Same. You haul the yoke over his neck and mutter a prayer to St. Isidore, patron of farmers, who probably gets way more mail than he wants. The ground is stubborn today, still half frozen, half mud, and entirely annoying. You press your body weight into the plow, each furrow dragging like a personal insult. Behind you, the ox lumbers along, chewing nothing with the focus of a philosopher. You think about bread and warm feet, and how someone once claimed there were lands where peasants don't have to plow at all. Probably fake news. Historians still argue whether peasants were truly overworked or just universally underpaid. But your back doesn't need a dissertation to confirm what it already knows. This life is labor. There's a rhythm to it, though. Scrape, push, grunt. Your hands tighten around the wooden handles, calluses against splinters. The soil breaks open like old secrets. It's not glamorous, but there's something comforting about seeing your progress, a line in the earth, marking your place in a world that rarely notices you. You pause to wipe your brow, and that's when you notice him, Peter, your cousin, leaning on a spade like it's a wine goblet. He's supposed to be helping. Instead, he's humming a love song and watching a bird. You wave him over, he waves back. That's it. No movement. One of your jokes for the day writes itself. If laziness were taxable, Peter would owe more than the priest. By mid-morning, your stomach is growling louder than the ox. You chew on a bit of rye bread you brought with you, hard as a roof tile, but full of texture. Read pebbles. The sun is now high enough to show the dirt streaks on your face and the dried mud caked under your nails. You look like a statue someone forgot to finish. Suddenly, the wind shifts. A low hum spreads through the valley. Bells. The monastery is ringing its mid-morning chime, calling monks to prayer and reminding everyone else how behind they are. You squint toward the distant spires, barely visible through the haze. There, in those stone walls, people read Latin, illuminate manuscripts, and argue about theology. You plow dirt. Still, you whisper a quiet thanks. For the weather, for the ox not falling over again, and for the fact that you haven't stepped on a rake in at least 2 weeks. That's what we call a winning streak. You break briefly for water, cold, clear, and carried in a goatskin flask that leaks just enough to make your shirt smell like, well, goat. As you sip, a neighbor passes by with a cartload of manure and a grin. "Fine scent today," he calls out. "Better than your stew," you reply, grinning. The banter is part of the job. Without it, farming would be nothing but mud and existential dread. And speaking of dread, storm clouds. Low and lumpy, gathering on the edge of the forest. You tighten your grip on the plow handles and push harder. The field won't till itself, and rain turns dirt into the kind of soup you don't want to bathe in. You quicken your pace, thoughts racing with it. Will the barley survive? Will Lord Benesh demand extra grain this year? Will Peter ever do anything useful? Big questions, no answers. By late afternoon, your body is officially done. Your shoulders burn, your arms feel like boiled cabbage, and the ox is giving you passive-aggressive side eyes. You unhitch the plow, pat his flank, and offer the last of your bread. He ignores it. Classic. As you walk the field's edge, you spot something strange, half buried in the earth near the old tree stump. A shard of pottery? A coin? You kneel and brush the dirt away. It's a small figurine carved from bone, with strange markings on its chest. Definitely not Christian. You show it to an old woman later. She squints and says, "Fertility charm." Or maybe a curse. Depends on who you ask. You don't ask again. Quirky finds like this aren't rare. Farmers stumble on forgotten relics all the time. Fragments of older lives, older fears. Once, someone in the next village dug up what they swore was a pagan altar. It turned out to be an overturned wine barrel. Still cursed, though. The walk home feels longer than usual. Your boots, if you're wearing them, squish unpleasantly with every step. You pass fences built from twisted branches, scarecrows that mostly scared children, and the ever-increasing smell of dinner being prepared in neighboring huts. Near your door, you pause. Inside, it's warm and noisy, your siblings bickering, your mother singing off-key, the fire crackling. It smells like onion stew and damp socks. You wouldn't trade it for anything.
You sit on the bench by the hearth, hunched like a sack of barley. The day's grime clings to your clothes, and the scent of field sweat is rivaled only by the rising steam from the bubbling stew pot. Your mother ladles something vaguely edible into wooden bowls. It's gruel again, with a bit of rabbit if you're lucky,
And if the baby didn't already get it. Spoiler, the baby did. Still, food is food. You cradle the bowl in your hands, soaking in its warmth, even before you taste it. The texture? Somewhere between mashed turnip and regret. You chew slowly, wondering if that crunch was a grain of barley or just more dirt. Probably dirt. Your older brother slurps noisily, oblivious. He chews with his mouth open, as if inviting the entire village to watch. He's already planning his escape, always talking about joining a merchant caravan or maybe becoming a monk. That's a laugh. He can't even read. But hey, dreams are free, unlike salt. Around the table, conversation flows. Not in polite dinner party fashion, but in half-shouted, overlapping chatter. You hear about Anichka's runaway goose, someone's cousin who's marrying a baker, so fancy, and of course your favorite topic, taxes. Jakub pops in mid-meal, which is very Jakub. He's got that look on his face again, the one that means gossip. He leans against the door like he's posing for a fresco and says, "You won't believe what I heard. Lord Benish is sending his steward to inspect the village. They say someone's been hiding grain." Everyone goes quiet. Even the fire seems to pause. Your father shifts uneasily. "Who would be stupid enough to hoard grain during audit season?" he mutters. Your grandfather raises an eyebrow. "Probably someone smart enough to want to eat this winter." That gets a few nervous laughs. Historians still argue whether village gossip served more as community glue or as fuel for division, but tonight it's doing both. Suspicion flickers behind every glance. After the meal, the bowls are rinsed with cold water and scrubbed with handfuls of dry hay. You take your turn, knuckles raw, grumbling as the soot clings to your sleeves. Then you settle on to the low bench by the hearth again, bellies full-ish, hands idle, ears tuned. This is when the good stuff comes out. Stories, scandal, and a few exaggerated personal victories. Your aunt swears she saw a comet the night before, glowing like a lantern in the sky. She says, "It means change is coming," she says dramatically, stirring her tea of elderflower and mystery herbs. You ask her if it also means her chickens will finally lay decent eggs. She throws a slipper at you. Jakub leans in. "I also heard the Baron's daughter is pregnant, and the father's not her husband." There's a collective gasp so sharp it could slice cheese. Your mother makes the sign of the cross. Your grandfather snorts and says, "The nobles play, we pay, as usual." The flicker of firelight softens the room, casting shadows like quiet ghosts on the walls. Your baby sister nestles in your lap, sticky fingers gripping your tunic. You pretend not to notice as she wipes her nose on your sleeve. She babbles something about a dancing mouse in the rafters. Could be a dream, could be accurate. The village midwife stops by. Her name is Ludmila, and she smells like garlic and smoke and the deep woods. She brings a pouch of dried nettle and a few clumps of questionable mushrooms. She says, "For strength and dreams." You're not sure if she means good dreams or weird ones. Both, probably. The conversation shifts to local legends. Someone mentions the spirit of the forest, an old woman with bark skin and hollow eyes who guards the oldest oak. She steals firewood, they say, and replaces it with wet moss. No one's actually seen her, but that hasn't stopped 3 different people from blaming her for their missing boots. Quirky as it sounds, folklore is your neighborhood's social media. It explains the unexplainable, justifies your suspicions, and occasionally terrifies the kids into behaving. Someone else mentions the midnight monk, a cloaked figure who appears near the church ruins, chanting in Latin backwards. His eyes glow red, or maybe that's just the reflection of torchlight. Either way, you sleep with your blanket tucked extra tight that night.
Eventually, your father unrolls a crinkled piece of parchment. It's old. He can't read it, but he insists it belonged to his grandfather. It's got scribbles, maybe Latin, maybe just chicken scratches. He claims it's a deed to land that no longer exists. Everyone leans in like it's a map to buried treasure. It's probably a shopping list. Still, it sparks one of your favorite games. What if? What if we owned a whole field? What if we had our own ox? What if we lived near the river? The dreams are small, but vivid. And sometimes, that's enough. As bedtime nears, the talk winds down. People yawn, stretch, scratch. Someone passes around a flask of leftover mead. You sip. It's sour and slightly fizzy. Someone definitely messed up the fermenting. You still drink it. Outside, the village is quiet. The stars are sharp and scattered like shattered glass across the night. You hear the coot of an owl, the bark of a distant dog, and the unmistakable echo of someone vomiting behind the blacksmith's hut. Feast days hit hard. Inside, you slide under your rough blanket again. Your brother farts loudly. He says it's to keep the devils out. You pray the devils don't take that as an invitation.
Morning comes not with a sunrise, but with shouting. The kind of shouting that means someone official is in town. You're barely dressed, half into your tunic and fully grumpy when you hear it again. The clop of hooves, the bark of a steward's order, and a sharp knock on your neighbor's door. You peer out the window. Lord Benish's steward has arrived, and he's brought an entourage that looks far too clean for people who claim to care about productivity. They wear deep red cloaks, polished boots, and the kind of smug expression only achievable by people who've never cleaned their own chamber pots. You brace yourself. There are three things a medieval peasant dreads: early frost, plague, and tax audits. This, unfortunately, is the third one. You grab your grain sacks, mostly empty, sadly, and line up behind your neighbors. The steward's men have taken over the old granary, set up a crude table, and are measuring every bag of barley, rye, and whatever else they can get their ink-stained hands on. Name, the clerk asks you, not looking up. You answer, resisting the urge to say something witty. You've learned from past experience, sarcasm is not tax-exempt. He rifles through a scroll, scribbles something, then motions to the sack. "This is it?" he asks, lifting the bag like it personally offended him. "Yes," you reply. He grunts. "You're behind." You're not, but arguing would only make it worse. You nod solemnly and accept your fate like a boiled turnip, quiet and resigned. A few huts down, Jakub is making a scene. "I gave 2 sacks last month and 3 eggs, one still warm," he shouts. The steward doesn't care. The eggs are gone, the scrolls are law, and Jakub now owes 2 more days of labor on the Lord's estate. It's a cautionary tale in real time. Historians still argue whether these taxes were purely exploitative or just badly implemented. Either way, today they're just exhausting. Back at your home, your mother clutches her salt pouch like it's the Holy Grail.
Salt is taxed per pinch. Yes, pinch. You remember a few winters ago when a steward fined old Carl for sneezing near the tax table. True story. Later, after the officials have moved on, you're called to the manor. Not for punishment this time, but to deliver tribute. A basket of eggs, some dried herbs, and that unfortunate goose that wandered into your yard and never left. The manor looms above the village like a smug stone cake. You walk past its gates, your feet aching on the cobbled path, your offering balanced awkwardly in your arms. Inside the courtyard, everything is absurdly clean. There are decorative hedges. A servant is literally brushing dust off a bench. You've never felt dirtier in your life. The steward meets you by the entrance and inspects the basket like he's choosing wine. He sniffs the herbs, nods, then gestures you away without a word. Classy. But then, something interesting. As you turn to leave, a page boy drops a parchment scroll from his satchel. It unrolls near your feet. You glance at it. Latin. Lots of it. Some of the ink is fresh. You look around. No one notices. You kneel slowly and nudge it with your foot. It's titled Proclamatio de Nova Reformatio. You have no idea what that means, but you recognize a few words: heresy, clergy, bohemica. You hand it back quickly, your heart pounding. That's not peasant material. That's the kind of thing that makes people disappear. Still, it sticks in your mind all day. Something's stirring beyond the village fences. Back at home, you explain the tribute went well, and no one questions the missing goose. Your mother nods, your father grunts, and your brother asks if the manor had real glass windows. They do. Later, you sit with the men of the village as they prepare for a conscripted workday at the Lord's estate. It's voluntary, which here means do it or get fined. You're tasked with repairing a stretch of road that's been muddy since the last king was crowned. You haul rocks, stack logs, and scrape mud until your fingers go numb. A nobleman rides past and doesn't even look at you. Probably didn't even notice the smell. You're starting to think you could be invisible. One of the workers, a man named Yeri, starts telling jokes to lighten the mood. Why did the noble fall off his horse, he says, already grinning. Why? Because his squire forgot to carry him. It's not that funny, but you laugh anyway. It's a laugh laced with bitterness, the kind that floats through cold mornings and calloused hands. Humor, after all, is your only untaxed possession. Quirky fact for today: Lord Benish has a falcon, a real live falcon that lives better than you. It gets fed twice a day and sleeps in a lined box warmer than your bed. You once saw it eat a roast quail while you were gnawing on boiled parsnips. Iconic. After work, you return home drained and irritable. Your sister shows you a daisy crown she made. You smile. It's lopsided and falling apart, but somehow perfect. You slip it on your head. Look, you say, I'm the tax lord now. Your siblings collapse in laughter. Even your father chuckles. It's a small moment, but it's yours.
You wake on a Sunday, which means one thing: church. Whether you've sinned a little or a lot this week, and let's be honest, hoarding that rabbit counts, you're expected to show up, kneel, mumble your amens, and pretend you didn't just fall asleep during the homily again. You dust the straw from your tunic and grab your patched wool cloak. It smells like a combination of mildew and sheep, which, to be fair, is probably how you smell too. The morning is crisp, with fog curled around the ground like the ghost of yesterday's fire. Your breath puffs in front of you as you join the steady trickle of villagers headed down the dirt path toward the church. The bell tolls from its crooked steeple, a rusty clang that sounds more like a warning than a welcome. The building itself leans slightly left, like it's trying to escape its own sermons. Inside, the air is cold, but packed with heat from too many bodies in one place. The walls are stone, the windows small and streaked with grime. A few faded saints peer down from ancient wooden panels, most of them with the same hunted stare, as if they, too, are stuck in an endless loop of Gregorian chants. You kneel. The floor is unforgiving. You shift on your knees to find the spot that hurts the least, which is none of them. The priest, Father Vaclav, drones in Latin. You understand maybe every 20th word, but that's not the point. This isn't about comprehension. It's about tradition and making sure no one thinks you're a heretic. He gives a long sermon about obedience and humility. You zone out halfway through and start counting cobwebs on the rafters. One is twitching, probably not a good sign. Historians still argue whether medieval villagers truly understood church teachings or simply followed out of fear, habit, or boredom. Based on your current attention span, the answer is likely all of the above. Communion comes next. You shuffle forward, mouth open, hoping for a real sip of wine. It's vinegar today. Again. You try not to wince. Behind you, Jakob whispers that he saw Father Vaclav at the alehouse last night. You shush him, but file that mental note away for later. After Mass, people linger in the courtyard. Church isn't just spiritual, it's also social. You hear rumors, greetings, small talk, and one passionate argument over whether it's St. Wenceslaus or St. Barbara who protects against toothache. You side with Barbara. Wenceslaus has a better song, but Barbara has that sturdy, dependable energy. Ludmila, the midwife, waves you over. She has a satchel of dried herbs and a rabbit's foot on a leather string. "Protection charm," she says, "just in case the priest missed any demons today." You take it. Why not? The church covers your soul, but Ludmila's got your skin, guts, and bad luck. On the walk home,
you pass a tree with ribbons tied to its branches. Wishes, placed there by villagers hoping for a child, a good harvest, or the return of someone long gone. You think about leaving something, but what would you wish for? Less mud, a second shirt, your own ox. You pluck a wildflower instead and tuck it behind your ear. Not quite a wish, but close. Back at the hut, your father is sharpening a sickle, your mother is grinding rye, and your brother is trying to look busy while doing nothing. You pull off your cloak and sit by the hearth. The embers glow warm. The scent of roasting onions fills the air. The house is quiet, a rare kind of peace. As evening falls, you sit outside on a stump, carving a bit of wood into what might one day be a spoon, or possibly a sad-looking squirrel. The sun dips behind the hills, spilling golden light across the fields. A hawk circles high above. You squint, wondering if it's Lord Benish's pampered falcon on a joyride again. That's when you see the stranger. He's on the main road, walking alone, wrapped in a travel cloak. His boots are dusty, and he carries a satchel slung over one shoulder. You watch as he pauses by the chapel cross, touches it briefly, then moves on. A traveling friar, a messenger, or just someone passing through. You ask Jakob later, and he claims the man stopped at his uncle's barn and asked about the Hussites. You raise an eyebrow. The what now? Rebels, Jakob whispers. They say they want to change the church, make it simple. Poor men preaching in Czech, not Latin. No more gold, no more indulgences. You snort. Sounds like a fast way to get hanged. Or listen to, Jakob says. People are tired. He's not wrong. Back inside, your mother clutches her rosary tighter. She says anything that threatens the church must be evil. But your father, though, doesn't speak. He just stares into the fire, the sickle still in his hand. These are dangerous times, you realize. Not because of wolves or warlords, but because ideas are slipping through cracks. Ideas that can't be stopped once they've taken root. Still, you have chores to do tomorrow. The pigs won't feed themselves, and the fence by the west plot is sagging again. So, for now, you'll let the priests argue and the rebels scheme. You'll just try to stay out of the way. That night, you dream of the church burning, not from fire, but from within. Its walls crumbling into scrolls and ink, and above it all, a falcon screams. When you wake, it's still dark, but something feels lighter. Morning breaks with an ominous squawk. You groan and roll over, only to realize you're not on your usual patch of straw, but halfway off the bench, tangled in a festivity-stained cloak and someone else's shoe. Feast days leave behind memories and messes. This is both. You blink against the sunlight slicing through the slats of the hut. Everything aches. Your legs from dancing, your head from questionable mead, and your dignity from trying to flirt while covered in beet juice. And then a scream. Not the dramatic, "someone stole my cake" kind of scream. No, This is real, raw, and neighborly. You scramble up and sprint outside, barefoot and very much not ready. Your neighbor, old Marta, is standing in her garden, flapping her arms like a startled goose. "That pig! That filthy pig!" she screeches. Your heart drops. Your pig? Yes, that pig. He's in her cabbage patch, snorting proudly, tail twitching in defiance. He somehow managed to knock over a beehive, trample the leeks, and, by the looks of it, engage in an enthusiastic and anatomically questionable display of affection with her scarecrow. You try to grab him, but he bolts. Mud flies. Marta hurls a turnip at you that misses by inches. Jakob emerges from a nearby haystack, still chewing a piece of pie, and yells, "Your pig's got taste!" Not helpful. Eventually, after much shouting and 2 failed tackles, you corner the pig near the well. You tie him up with an old clothesline, apologize profusely, and offer Marta a sack of grain by way of reparations. She glares at you for a full minute before muttering something about curses and cabbage. You nod solemnly. Cabbage is sacred. Historians still argue whether livestock disputes were minor inconveniences or the medieval version of full-blown lawsuits. Judging by Marta's rage, they were both. Later that day, the village council meets under the linden tree. It's not official, of course. There's no scroll, no seal, no fountain pen, just 5 old men and 1 sturdy bench. You're summoned because apparently your pig has a record. Turns out this isn't his first offense. Last month, he nibbled the thatch off Marta's outhouse. The month before, he got stuck inside the chapel and refused to leave, squealing every time the priest mentioned deliverance. The joke writes itself. So now the council has to decide, exile or castration. For the pig, that is. You plead your case, describe the fence he broke through, the training you definitely intended to give him, and how he's not malicious, just misunderstood. Jakob pipes up from the crowd. Like his owner. Also not helpful. After much grumbling, the council agrees to a compromise. You build a proper pen, dig it deep, reinforce it with stakes, and keep the pig away from holy objects and unmarried scarecrows. One more incident, and he becomes stew. You nod. The pig grunts. Marta spits into the dirt with conviction. Construction begins immediately. You drag logs from the forest, hammer them together with bent nails in more hope than skill. Your brother offers suggestions like, make it pig-proof, which, technically correct, is useless. By sunset, you've built something between a fortress and a cage match arena. The pig surveys it with suspicion. You point at him and say, "Try me." He snorts. That evening, as you scrub the dirt from your hands, your father returns from a hunting trip. He didn't catch anything, but comes back with something better, a story. He says, bandits near the river, tried to rob a merchant, got chased off by Hussites. You blink. The same Hussites Jakob is always whispering about? He nods. They say they're organizing now, more than just sermons and ideas. Men with spears, women too. You glance around. The village is quiet, chickens roosting, firelight flickering. The idea of rebellion seems far away until it doesn't. Later, you sit with Ludmila, the midwife, as she sorts herbs and boils something pungent. You tell her about the pig disaster. She laughs until she wheezes, then dabs your scraped elbow with something that stings like betrayal. You know, in the old days, pigs were sacred, symbols of prosperity, carved onto stones, buried with chiefs. You say, "Mine hump scarecrows." She shrugs. Prosperity comes in many forms. Then she leans closer. Keep your ears open. The world's shifting. The lords feel it. The priests dream it. Even the pigs sense it. You want to ask more, but she's already gone, muttering about moon phases and fennel. Before bed, you check the pig pen. He's asleep, belly up, snoring like thunder. You stare down at him, this chaotic beast who nearly sparked a civil war over cabbage, and chuckle. He might be trouble, but he's your trouble. As you walk back to the hut, fireflies blink in the grass. The sky is velvet black, sprinkled with stars, and your breath comes easy for the first time in days. Tomorrow there will be more work, more rumors, more chores, but tonight you rest, one hand on the door, the other still smelling faintly of turnip and triumph.
The air smells wrong. Not wrong like spoiled milk or Jacob's feet after a thunderstorm. No, this is stranger, acrid, metallic. You wake before dawn, and it takes a moment to realize it's the smoke. Not thick enough to choke you, but sharp enough to stir something uneasy in your gut. By the time you step outside, others are already whispering. It's not the village burning, thank all saints, but a nearby hamlet. Word spreads faster than fire ever could. Plague, someone mutters. That word alone halts time. You stare across the distant treetops where a haze floats just a little too heavily. It could be a bad cook fire, or it could mean that death has saddled up again, wearing his most dramatic cloak. You make your way to Ludmila's hut. If anyone knows what's coming, it's her. She's already mixing something that smells like regret steeped in nettles. Her hands are stained brown from dried herbs, and her eyes dart like sparrows. Boils, she says before you even ask. Fevers, breath like rot. They say it bloomed overnight. You swallow. She presses a packet of herbs into your palm, yarrow, sage, and something that crackles like pine needles. Boil it, inhale the steam, and for heaven's sake, don't touch anyone from over the ridge. You nod. And if it comes here? She raises an eyebrow. Pray and get very, very clean. You bathe, properly, not a rinse in the creek, but a full scrub in a wooden barrel, using lye soap that smells like old cheese and stings like betrayal. Your mother brings out the linen sheets reserved for holy days and hangs them in the sun. Your father sharpens everything, sickles, knives, pitchforks, as if steel could fight illness. Historians still argue whether these folk remedies helped or just gave people something to do while panicking. Either way, they're what you've got. Jakob, of course, declares himself immune. "I once ate raw pig liver and survived," he says proudly. "Exactly," you reply. "The plague's afraid of you." That afternoon, a trader rides through in a hurry. His cart is covered in canvas, and he barely slows as he shouts, "Avoid Nove Hardy!
Sealed off, they're burning the dead in the square. Children scatter. Women make the sign of the cross. You notice Father Václav watching from behind the chapel door. He doesn't come out. You remember a rumor from last year, a woman who rubbed garlic on her feet every night and never got sick. Or the tale of the twin boys who locked themselves in a root cellar for a whole season and came out slightly feral but healthy. You don't have garlic, but you have a root cellar. You start planning just in case. Ludmilla returns at sundown. She brings tonics, bitter, gritty, and likely 40% alcohol, and offers to check everyone's pulses. She smells your breath, peers in your eyes, and pokes your stomach. Healthy, but anxious. You raise an eyebrow. Your heartbeat flutters like a chicken on laundry day. Reassuring. Still, she gives you a charm, a little bag with juniper, thistle, and dried toad skin. Hang it by your door, or eat it if things get desperate. You hang it. Far from the pig. That night, your dreams twist. You see shadowy figures with black hoods and silver eyes, dragging carts filled with groaning voices. The sky rains ashes, and a pale hand reaches for yours, ice cold and feather light. You wake gasping. Outside, the owls are silent. Your baby sister coughs once in her sleep, and your entire body freezes. But she turns over, snorts, and continues snoring. You exhale. The next morning, you head into the woods with Ludmilla. She's gathering feverwort and tree bark for tea. You ask if any of it really works. She shrugs. Healing is faith, in plants, in saints, in yourself. I give the body tools. The rest is up to the stars. It's cryptic, but you believe her, especially after she finds a mushroom that smells like hot vinegar and announces, "This one wards off coughing." You keep it anyway, just in case. On the way home, you notice something strange, a pile of stones beside the old trail, neatly stacked, almost ritualistic. Ludmilla frowns and mutters, "Protection ward." You tilt your head. Some villages leave markers to warn travelers away. If they've got plague, they don't want visitors. You don't ask how she knows. The message is clear. Avoid that path. But what if the illness doesn't respect boundaries? Back in the village, a meeting is held. People talk in nervous bursts, shouting over one another. Some want to close the gates. Others say they should pray harder. One man suggests sacrificing a rooster. You're not sure if he's joking. The priest finally speaks. This is a time of testing, of faith. We must cleanse ourselves, in spirit and in action. Someone claps. Someone else starts scrubbing the well bucket with a prayer. Your job, you help dig a drainage trench near the latrines. Because nothing says divine protection like good hygiene. That evening, Elena stops by. She brings honeyed barley cakes and offers one with a shy smile. You sit on the bench outside your hut, 6 inches apart. That's as close as courage allows. You both stare up at the stars, not speaking for a long time. Then she says softly, "If it comes, I'll hide with my aunt. She's got a house in the hills." You nod. "Bring garlic." She laughs, just once, and leans her shoulder briefly against yours. Then she stands and vanishes into the dusk. You remain, wondering how long this calm will last.
Winter comes slowly, with frosted breath and creaking doors, then with boots full of slush and the gentle heartbreak of bare trees. You wake each morning a little colder, your blanket a little stiffer, your fingers a little more reluctant to greet the day. The hearth becomes the heart of everything. You spend hours feeding it scraps of wood and hope.
The smoke clings to your clothes like a loyal friend, and your eyelashes sometimes frost over before you even leave the hut. Today is about preparation, because surviving winter in 15th-century Bohemia isn't just a chore, it's an ongoing negotiation with death. Your first job is patching the roof. Again. The thatch has slumped, and snow drips through like a leaky saint's blessing. You climb up with bundles of dry straw, a hammer, and the knowledge that if you fall, the snow will cushion nothing. Jakob stands below, occasionally offering helpful advice like, "Don't die." You wedge the straw into gaps and tie it tight with twine, fingers numbing with each knot. The wind slices at your ears. By the time you climb down, you can't feel your nose, which might be for the best. It was red and peeling anyway. Your father eyes the roof and grunts approval, which is high praise coming from him. Inside, your mother is boiling nettles and bark for a tea that tastes like tree but warms the bones. You drink it with both hands wrapped around the cup, pretending it doesn't taste like wet firewood. Then there's the wool. Last month, your aunt traded a basket of goose feathers for 2 bundles of raw wool. Today, you and your sister card it, pulling and combing, until it looks less like a dirty sheep and more like something wearable. You learn quickly that wool is picky. It clings, it tangles, and it's never not shedding. By the end, you look like a lint creature from a haunted laundry. Still, spinning begins. Your mother works the spindle with practiced grace, twisting fibers into thread like she's whispering secrets to the wool. You try it. It laughs at you. The spindle rolls under the table, mocking your ambition. Historians still argue whether spinning was meditative or maddening. Judging by your snarled thread, it's both. Next is firewood. You trek into the forest, boots crunching snow, the world silent except for your breath and the crows. The trees stand like frozen monks, cloaked in white. You carry a dull axe and a sled made from 2 planks and a prayer. You cut slowly, each swing echoing through the stillness. Birch, pine, anything dry enough to burn. You load the sled until it creaks, then drag it home with thighs burning and arms shaking. At the village edge, you pass Ludmila. She's stringing garlic and juniper on a doorframe. Keeps bad spirits out, she says, and hungry neighbors. You nod solemnly and add garlic to your to-do list. That night, you sit near the fire, stitching up a wool cloak, with fingers so clumsy they may as well be wearing mittens already. Your brother reads, yes, reads, a single page of a Latin psalter he borrowed from the church. You stare at the letters, trying to decipher them like ancient runes. This one means sin. This one means lamb, or maybe food. Both work. Supplies dwindle quickly. By mid-month, the onions are gone, the turnips are shriveled, and the dried apples taste like regret. Your mother invents a stew with flour, salt, and something suspiciously chewy that no one identifies. You eat it anyway. Quirky fact: people used to stuff old boots with straw, soak them in broth, and chew them for sustenance. You're not there yet, but the boots are looking tender. One day, the snow falls too fast. The sky dumps flakes thick as wool, blinding everything. The path to the well vanishes. You dig it out twice, each time returning soaked and grumpy. Your clothes freeze before you can strip them. You warm your feet near the fire until they sting back to life, then wrap them in linen like a poorly made burrito. Jakob visits, chattering about ice ghosts and offering to trade a rabbit pelt for your last bit of lard. You counter with a cracked mug. Deal. You're all just bartering now. Items for warmth, stories for laughter, silence for space. Then comes the frostbite scare. Your sister returns from feeding the goats with one hand pale and waxy.
Ludmila arrives, wraps it in snow first, then warm rags, muttering about circulation and foolish parents who let babies carry buckets. You protest. She glares. You shut up. The girl recovers, but that night you keep waking up to check her breathing. The fire dies around midnight. You crawl out of bed to feed it with your last stick of birch. The sparks leap up like stars, and for a second, the room feels holy. You try trapping again. Snares are set by the thicket where rabbits sometimes tunnel. After 3 days, you catch a weasel. Not ideal, but fur is fur. You tan the hide outside, holding your breath against the smell. Your brother suggests wearing it like a hat. You suggest throwing it at him. You both laugh. Sort of. But then, a blessing. The snow thaws briefly, and a traveling peddler arrives on wooden skis with a sack full of marvels. Candles, dried mushrooms, wool scraps, and best of all, beeswax. You trade half a blanket for 2 candles and a pot of tallow. That night your hut glows like a royal chamber. You all sit a little closer to each other, share a little more stew, and pretend the warmth will last. It won't. But pretending helps.
The monks are arguing again. You can hear them from behind the monastery wall, sharp voices bouncing off stone, punctuated by the occasional clang of a dropped chalice or the flutter of startled pigeons. You're crouched by the back gate, gathering dried nettle and creeping thyme, trying very hard to not look suspicious. You shouldn't be here. Officially, peasants aren't allowed inside the monastery gardens without permission. Unofficially, everyone knows the best herbs grow here, and Ludmila has been quietly guiding you in the art of non-intrusive borrowing. You pluck a handful of mint and stuff it into your pouch. A voice cuts through the bushes. If we teach them to read, they'll ask why. You freeze. You inch closer to the wall's low corner, curious, reckless. A crack in the stone reveals part of the cloister garden, orderly and serene, except for the 3 monks pacing like philosophers mid-breakup. One clutches a rolled parchment, the other an ink-stained quill. The third just looks angry. They have souls, one insists. Surely they deserve words. Souls? Yes. Libraries? No. Too much knowledge makes them dangerous. You lean in. Dangerous? That's new. Historians still argue whether monasteries were centers of preservation or quiet control. But today you get a rare glimpse of tension behind the calm. Monks aren't just copying scripture, they're wrestling with its consequences. You slip away unnoticed, heart pounding. Back in the woods, you meet Ludmila and show her your harvest. She inspects the herbs like a jeweler with a stolen crown. Mint for digestion, thyme for cough, and nettle, well, nettles cure everything but a broken heart. She winks. You flush. You mention what you overheard. She goes quiet for a moment, then says, "There are books in there older than this village, and a few monks who still believe books are alive." Alive? She nods. Words can spread faster than fire. Later, you walk past the monastery's front path, where a monk named Jan tends the bees. He's younger, kind-eyed, and always smells faintly of wax and honey. You've traded with him before, herbs for candles, stories for riddles. Today he waves you over and presses a small folded note into your palm. If you want to understand what's coming, read this. You glance down. Inked Latin scrawled in haste. You can't read it. He sees your confusion and smiles. Give it to Ludmila. Then he turns back to the hives. Back at the hut, Ludmila reads the note aloud by candlelight. It's a copy of something called the 4 Articles of Prague, words written by scholars, rebels, and priests all at once. They want communion for everyone, bread and wine. They want sermons in Czech, not Latin. They want the clergy to give up land and wealth. You blink. She nods. Heresy, according to some. Truth, according to others. You suddenly remember the parchment the steward dropped weeks ago. Nova Reformatione. It's all connected, isn't it? Jakob hears the story and nearly jumps through the ceiling. I knew it! I said change was coming. You roll your eyes. You also said pigs can forecast snow. Still waiting to be proven wrong, he grins. But even your father listens quietly. He was never one for big ideas, just soil and seasons. Yet now he stares into the fire like he's seeing something distant. It's dangerous, he finally mutters, but sometimes dangerous is what we need. You visit Brother Jan again. He lets you help with the bees. It's oddly peaceful, moving slowly, gently. The hum surrounds you, steady and soothing. He tells you about how the queen leads without command, how the hive works not from fear, but from shared purpose. They defend their home, he says, but only when forced. Are we bees, then? He smiles. We could be. You leave with a jar of honey and more questions than answers. That night, you can't sleep. The candle flickers low. You stare at the ceiling and imagine it, a world where the priest speaks your language, where knowledge is shared, not hoarded, where you can read the stories yourself. You slip outside. The air is crisp and the stars blink lazily in the sky. Somewhere the monks are still awake, silent shadows gliding between stone arches, guarding secrets and planting seeds. You wonder how long before the seeds crack open. In the morning, you gather the courage to ask your brother to teach you a few letters. Just a few. He agrees on the condition that you do his share of goat watching tomorrow. Deal. You spend an hour tracing shapes into the dirt. That's A, like amen, or ale, important stuff. It's slow, it's hard, but it's something. A step, a sound, a spark. You're still a peasant. You still wake with dirt under your nails and chores longer than your limbs, but now you carry a piece of parchment in your tunic with 3 crooked letters scratched onto it. A prayer? A protest? Maybe both.
Love begins with potatoes. Well, not actual potatoes. You won't see those in Bohemia for another 100 years. But metaphorically, it's that kind of love. Starchy, awkward, and somehow nourishing. You're helping at the village well, hauling buckets while your sleeves soak and your toes flirt with frostbite. She's there too. Elena, the elder brewer's niece. She's lugging a basket of apples, half frozen, the other half mostly bruised. One rolls out and hits your boot. "Return it if it apologizes," she says without looking. You grin. "It just did. Said it was inspecting my footwork." She smirks.
Historians might debate courtship customs, but this is what flirting looks like when neither of you has clean socks and the smell of onions lingers in your hair. You walk her home. Not intentionally, it just happens. Her house is one lane over, past the blacksmith's hut, where sparks burst into the sky like fiery hiccups. You talk about nothing. How the frost keeps getting inside your boots. How pigs might secretly plot revenge. How last night you thought the moon looked tired. "I like that," she says. "A tired moon." At her door she hands you one of the apples. "It's the best one." She lies. You eat it anyway. The next week, her aunt visits your mother. You don't know what's said, but there are glances. Measured, weighing. The kind that say, maybe not terrible. Dowries are whispered about, softly, like someone might overhear and jinx it. Your father sharpens tools more than usual, a nervous tick disguised as usefulness. You ask Jakob what he thinks. He offers profound wisdom. Marry for stew. Love is a bonus. He's not wrong. A few days later, Elena meets you near the riverbank, where the water runs slower in winter. She brings bread with poppy seeds and a question in her eyes. "Would you ever want to leave here?" she asks. You chew slowly. The truth is tangled. Yes, because the world is wide and full of ideas now whispering their way into your village. No, because your roots are deep, buried in this soil and its stubborn beauty. "I think I'd like to see what's out there, but I'd miss the mud." She laughs. "Then we maybe visit and bring a jar of it with us." There's an unspoken decision after that. No formal promise yet, no ring. Rings are for nobles. But something has shifted. You both carry it, quiet and steady, like a flame cupped between palms. Of course, nothing is simple. A merchant's son from the next town over has also taken notice. He's got money, a clean tunic, and, worst of all, teeth that mostly match. His name is Philip, and he visits with pastries and smug confidence. Your competition arrives on horseback. You show up with turnips. He recites Latin verse. You tell a story about a goose that learned to knock on doors for snacks. Elena laughs harder at yours. Still, her family has to consider. Marriage is less about passion and more about alliances, survival, dowries, and pigs. Always pigs. Your family offers a modest arrangement. Some wool, a patch of field, 2 jars of preserved beets, and your grandfather's walking stick, which he has not yet agreed to part with. Elena's aunt wants more. You overhear part of the negotiation. She's clever, your mother says. She's strong, and she knows how to keep a fire going. "She could do worse," says the aunt. "She has," your mother replies. That earns a laugh. It helps. Then, unexpectedly, a gift. Ludmilla steps in. She visits Elena's aunt under the guise of herbal tea and casually drops a few stories. How you helped during the fever scare, how you learned your letters, how you saved the pig from its second execution. a tale that has grown increasingly exaggerated. By week's end, the dowry is settled. 2 goats, 1 loom, a wedding cloth your mother embroidered during quieter days, and yes, the walking stick. Your grandfather sulks dramatically, then insists on delivering it himself, so it knows it's not being abandoned. The engagement is marked by a simple meal: stew, bread, and the awkward clink of wooden cups. Elena sits beside you, elbow touching yours, both of you pretending you're ridiculously nervous. Afterwards, you walk together through the frost-bitten fields, hands barely brushing. She's humming something under her breath. You ask what the song is. She says, "It's one I made up. It has no words, just walking music." You hum along. The village reacts predictably. Jakob throws a mock ceremony by the well, pronouncing you married and demanding you kiss the pig for luck. You counter by dumping a bucket of water over his head. The pig seems disappointed. Others offer advice. Don't let her near the wine cellar. Never sleep with cold feet. Always compliment her cabbage. You nod solemnly, pretending these are revelations. But deep down, you know the truth. This life is hard and fragile and full of things that can't be controlled. But if you're going to face it, better to do so with someone who laughs at tired moons and knows which apple is truly the best.
Your feet hurt, not in a poetic, lovesick kind of way, but in the very real, I've walked across 2 frozen fields and a creek kind of way. You're returning from the nearby town, having paid your tithe, your tax, and your remaining patience to 3 different men who all believe they're entitled to your barley. The bag you left with was full. The bag you return with contains a few shriveled carrots, a piece of charcoal, and a single candle stub. You mutter to yourself as you limp into the village, "Next time I'm sending the pig." Which is ironic because the pig is currently living his best life belly deep in a pile of straw and dreams. This month, taxes hit harder than usual. Lord Benish is building a new granary, or a hunting lodge, or maybe just wants to watch peasants squirm. Whatever the reason, he's raised the grain quota. Again. You sit with your father, going over what's left in the granary. It's not great. A few sacks of barley, a handful of oats, and your secret stash of dried apples. Even those look apologetic. "He'll want double by spring," he grumbles, running a hand over his beard like it might sprout more food. "And then there's the church." Ah, yes, the church. Never one to be outdone in the art of demanding. You walk to the chapel, sack slung over one shoulder, and wait in line with the others. Father Veklev stands beside a small wooden chest, collecting tithe offerings, a silver plate for coins, a basket for eggs, a second basket for overflow eggs, which seems optimistic. You drop in a small bundle of garlic and a hard heel of rye bread. It's not much, but it's all you can give without feeding your family dirt stew tonight. Veklev nods, gives you a look that hovers between pity and approval, and murmurs a prayer in Latin. You hear Benedictus, Pauper, and oddly, Asinus. That last one means donkey. You raise an eyebrow. He shrugs. On the way home, you pass Jakob, who's limping dramatically. "Blisters," he moans, "from walking to town." "You went to the alehouse," you reply. "Same distance, greater burden." He opens his coat to reveal a bottle of apple wine, grinning like he just won a crusade. "Payment for delivering a message," he says, shaking the bottle. "Want some?"
You take a sip. It tastes like fermented apples and regret. Still, it numbs the blisters. Evening falls. Your body aches, your stomach grumbles, and your boots, such as they are, threaten to abandon you. You sit by the fire, unlacing the straps and peeling the fabric away from your swollen feet. Your mother brings a bowl of hot water infused with pine needles. You soak your toes while pretending not to wince. Across the room, your brother is making a new pair of insoles from old sackcloth and goat hair. You envy him, just slightly. His feet haven't seen tax season. After dinner, parsnip stew and a suspiciously chewy hunk of cheese, you and Elena sit outside on the low stone wall. She wraps a shawl around both of you, and you share the candle stub, letting its tiny flame flicker between your hands. "We give so much," she says softly. "Because they say we owe it," you reply. "And who do they give to?" You stare at the stars. It's not the kind of question with a bedtime answer. Historians still argue whether tithes and taxes were necessary contributions or institutionalized cruelty. All you know is this: you gave, and you still went to bed hungry. The next morning, you're summoned. Not by name, of course, just by presence. Lord Benish's steward arrives on horseback, sleek cloak, polished boots, the usual disdain. He reads from a scroll so long it could be a sleeping mat. By decree, he begins, each household shall contribute 1 day of labor per fortnight to the estate. Jakob leans in. A fortnight is 2 weeks, you whisper. Like a game? You slap his arm. The decree continues. Road repair, livestock management, and, most mysteriously, aesthetic clearing of the South Meadow. No one knows what that means, but it probably involves scythes and crying. You're assigned fence mending, which sounds simple. It isn't. The estate fences span miles. They wrap around hunting grounds where no one but the Lord and his friends are allowed. You're meant to keep the deer in and the peasants out, which is ironic because you're building the thing. You hammer stakes into frozen earth while your breath curls like smoke. The steward watches from atop his horse, not lifting a finger. At one point, he offers encouragement in the form of, "You missed a spot." You consider missing him with a snowball. You don't. By midday, your hands are raw. Blisters bloom under your gloves, and your knees threaten mutiny. You share a crust of bread with Jakob and stare at the half-complete fence like it personally offended you. "Why do they even need a fence?" you ask. "To keep ideas from sneaking in," he replies. You both laugh, bitter but honest. The walk home is slow. Your feet throb, your back spasms, your soul might be leaking out through your ears. But as you pass the chapel, you hear singing. Soft, in Czech, not Latin. Familiar voices whispering praise without formality. You pause. Listen. It's not rebellion, not yet. But it's something. You limp the rest of the way. Candle stub in one pocket, Elena's hand in the other. You paid your dues today. And somehow, you're still whole.
You hear it first in the alehouse, not from a soldier or a priest, but from a peddler with one eye and 2 mugs of mead. He slams his cup on the table and says, "They took Prague." Everyone stares. "Took it how?" someone asks. "Like a gift, like a war," someone else mutters. The peddler wipes foam from his chin and says, "Hussites, the radicals. They've got priests with swords and peasants with pitchforks, and they sing hymns while they fight, loud enough to make your ears ring." Jakob leans toward you, eyes wide. "Told you." You nod, not because you're surprised, because it's happening. The murmurs, the leaflets, the scrolls, the whispered sermons, it's all erupting. And now,
Rebellion is no longer just something you hear about. It's something coming toward you. You leave the alehouse quiet, the echo of hymns you've never heard ringing in your ears. Outside, the village feels different. The same crooked fences, the same muddy paths, the same three-legged goat chewing laundry. But under it all, a vibration, a pressure in the ground, like a drumbeat you can't yet name. At home, you tell your father. He listens, then shakes his head. Wars are for kings and lords. But it's not their war, you say. It's ours now. He doesn't reply, just tosses another log into the fire and says, "Then make sure your boots are patched." The next week, the first group arrives. Not an army, not even soldiers, just people, 30 dozen of them, tired, hungry, marching through with wooden shields and farm tools repurposed for war. Their leader is a former monk with a voice like gravel and a staff taller than you. They ask for food. They sing hymns. They leave behind a parchment tacked to the well. Truth is bread for the soul. If you starve it, the body will follow. Someone scribbles Amen underneath. Someone else crosses it out. In the days that follow, the village divides, not neatly, not with sides and banners, but with glances. Some wear small wooden crosses as pins. Others mutter about blasphemy. The priest preaches peace. Jacob mutters that peace is just the space between uprisings. Historians still argue whether the Hussite movement was a religious crusade or a social revolution. In your village, it's both. The hunger for justice mingles with the hunger for bread, and sometimes it's hard to tell the difference. Elena brings you a pamphlet copied by hand, a translation of Jan Hus's words. The church must serve the poor, not feed on them. You read it slowly, the letters still unfamiliar, but powerful. Later, in the woods, you meet Brother Jan again. He's left the monastery. His robe is patched, his hands dirtier than ever. "I thought monks weren't allowed to leave," you say. He smiles. "Monks follow vows. Men follow truth." You walk with him for a while. He tells you about cities burning, castles seized, nobles begging for peace. "The king can't control them anymore," he says. "Neither can Rome." You ask if that's good. He pauses. "That depends who's holding the torch." At the spring market, things get tenser. A town guard demands extra coin for entry. A merchant refuses and gets beaten in the mud. Someone spits on the priest's robe. A Hussite band marches through with a wagon full of pamphlets and a banner reading, "Let the word walk unshackled." People cheer, others jeer. You quietly pocket one of the pamphlets. The walk home is quiet. You and Elena don't speak, but her hand finds yours anyway. Then come the warnings. A rider passes through, shouting that soldiers are assembling to the south. Nobles are banding together. The church has declared the rebels heretics. Excommunication, confiscation, sword and flame. You help your father hide the grain sacks deeper in the cellar, just in case. You help Ludmilla bury a box of tinctures and scrolls. You help Brother Jan write out 3 copies of a sermon and pass them to strangers under torchlight.
You're not sure when helping became choosing. But here you are. The next morning, Father Václav calls for prayer. The chapel fills with uneasy villagers. The pews groan, and the candlelight flickers like it's nervous too. He speaks softly. This is not our war. Jakob coughs loudly. Václav goes on, but our souls are not neutral. What you bless, you become. What you allow, you inherit. You stare at the crucifix and wonder whether it's watching or waiting. That night, you and Elena sit at the edge of the fields, staring towards the hills. Fires burn in the distance, not just hearths, signal fires, campfires, signs. We should leave, she says. If it comes here, where would we go? She doesn't answer. The stars feel farther away tonight. Then, a knock at your door. Not frantic, not friendly, just firm. Your father opens it. 3 people stand outside, 1 woman, 2 boys, all armed, dirty, eyes like cracked ice. We need volunteers, she says, tomorrow. For what? Your mother asks. For everything. She hands your father a scroll, on it a simple question. Will you stand for what you believe or kneel for what you fear? You don't sleep that night. The air is too still, the fire too quiet. You lie awake, staring at the underside of the thatched roof, listening to the sounds of your family breathing in the dark. Your father snores lightly. Your sister whimpers once in a dream. Somewhere outside, a dog barks, then falls silent. The scroll still sits on the table, unrolled. Its question blazes louder than the fire ever did. Will you stand for what you believe, or kneel for what you fear? The village wakes early, not with roosters or bells, but with silence. People gather around the well, bundled in cloaks, not speaking. The traveling Hussite leader is back, the woman from last night. Her name is Dislava, and she carries herself like someone who's seen too many winters to be afraid of another one. She doesn't shout. She doesn't sermonize. She just explains. The lords are coming, armed, angry, ready to make examples. The Hussites are defending nearby towns. Volunteers are needed, not just for battle, but for carrying supplies, tending wounds, and watching roads. It's not a demand, it's an invitation, and everyone hears it. Later, your family gathers outside the hut. No raised voices, no grand declarations. Your father stares into the dirt. I swore I'd never wear a blade again, he mutters, but I also swore I'd never watch my children go hungry. He picks up his old axe.
Your mother packs dried beans and wool cloth. Your brother, who has never been in a real fight, ties on your grandfather's walking stick like it's a sword. You look to Elena. She's already wearing her boots. You don't leave the village, not fully, but you prepare. You dig trenches along the path, reinforce the fences, hide what food you can. Ludmilla teaches people to make poultices with crushed moss and beeswax. Brother Jan builds a hidden cache of scrolls and bandages in the hollow of a tree. You help wherever you can. Jakob volunteers to stand guard, which turns out to involve a large stick and pretending to be taller than he is. Every evening, you sit with Elena under the same tree, watching smoke rise on the horizon. It always seems closer. One day riders arrive, noble scouts in red and silver. They don't speak, just pass through, eyes cold, hands on sword hilts. One of them stares at your baby sister for too long. Your father steps between them and says nothing. The man moves on. That night, you sleep with the axe near your bed. A week later, the confrontation comes. You hear it before you see it. The rumble of hooves, the clatter of carts, the creak of leather armor. Dozens of soldiers, noblemen, mercenaries, and conscripts march toward your village like a slow-moving thunderstorm. Zdislava stands at the gate with 30 villagers behind her, some with pitchforks, some with clubs. One man has an actual sword, rusted and slightly bent. You're among them. Your palms sweat. Your heart pounds like a hammer on wood. Elena squeezes your hand once, then lets go. The soldiers stop 20 paces from the gate. Their captain, a man with a plumed helmet and a voice that sounds bored, raises a scroll. This village is to be searched for sedition. No resistance will be tolerated. Kneel, and you'll be spared. Zdislava steps forward. Her voice is clear. We kneel not for no lie. Silence. Then chaos.
It's not a battle. Not really. It's a scuffle, a scream, a surge of motion. You see Jakub trip a soldier with a barrel. You see Brother Jan swinging a torch. You see your father take a blow to the ribs and still stand tall. You don't fight. You run. Not away, but around. You lead 2 children to the root cellar, toss a log in front of the door, and sprint to the chapel. Inside, you find Father Václav tending a wounded girl with a cloth soaked in wine. He nods when you offer your sleeve. Your soul is braver than mine, he says, wrapping a bandage. You want to tell him he's wrong, but there's no time. By dusk, the soldiers leave.
They don't win. Not really. They take food, smash barrels, burn the haystack. But they don't take the spirit. They don't take the truth. And that night, under a sky torn by smoke and stars, your village sings. Not hymns in Latin, but your own songs. Rough, crooked, brave. The next morning, you bury the dead. Only two. Old Marta, who tripped while yelling at a soldier, and a young man named Matei, who stood his ground too long. You carve crosses, say names, share stories. Then you return to the fields, because the ground still needs sowing, and spring is coming. A week later, a messenger arrives, on foot, dirty and breathless. "Pleasant stands," he yells. "They held the walls." People cheer. You smile. Even the pig snorts in approval. That night, you and Alina sit under your usual tree. She pulls something from her satchel, a cloth bundle. Inside is a sash embroidered with the word Pravda, truth. She ties it around your wrist. You kiss her, for real this time. No pig jokes, no splashing wells, just truth. Spring sneaks in like a shy child, tiptoeing across frozen fields and leaving muddy footprints behind. The frost pulls back from the soil, the air begins to smell faintly of damp grass and things trying to be green. And for the first time in months, your boots don't feel like wooden coffins. You wake to bird song, real bird song, not Jacob's impression of birds drunk on old ale, and sunlight pouring through the window like a blessing you didn't ask for, but secretly needed. Today you plant, not for the Lord, not for the tithe, not for the ledger, for you, for the people who made it through the winter, for the ones who didn't. Your hands are still calloused, your back still sore, but you feel lighter. Not because life has gotten easier. It hasn't. The noble tax collector has already ridden through once this season, and his horse pooped in your potato plot. You suspect it was deliberate. But you've changed. You carry knowledge now, and a little bit of rebellion. You walk the same muddy paths, but with your head higher. And, okay, with slightly better boots. Elena stitched extra wool into them. You haven't had a toe frostbite scare all week. In the village, fences are being rebuilt. The chapel's roof has been patched. Children run wild, laughing like little goblins, making wooden swords and arguing about who gets to be Zdislava in their pretend battles. You see Father Vaclav reading from a Czech scroll. He still wears his collar, but his sermons are different now, gentler, more human. He pauses sometimes to ask questions, even listens for answers. Even he has changed. One morning, Ludmilla calls you to her hut. She's holding a folded cloth and smiling the way she does when she knows something you don't. She hands you a satchel of dried herbs, a new needle, and, curiously, a comb. She says, "You're getting married." You blink. "Did Elena tell you?" She snorts. Elena didn't have to. You've been humming. You didn't realize you'd been humming. The wedding is simple. Just the village, a loaf of bread, some early dandelions braided into a crown. You wear your cleanest shirt, which still smells faintly of smoked fish. Elena laughs and pretends not to notice. Father Vaclav performs the ceremony. Someone plays a broken lute. Jakob cries harder than your sister. You and Elena dance barefoot in the mud, and for once, you don't care how foolish you look. You're not dancing to impress. You're dancing because you're alive. Afterward, you sit together near the pig pen. The pig still alive, still smug, still somehow fatter than ever. You toast with mead. You talk about maybe having children. You don't talk about war. Not tonight. But the world beyond your village isn't quiet. Every now and then a rider brings word of new battles, of kings fleeing, of cities choosing sides. You and your neighbors keep watch. You sharpen tools. You stay ready. But you also sow seeds, bake bread, read when you can, pray when you need to, laugh because not laughing would be defeat. Historians still argue what the Hussite movement truly meant. Was it revolution or just another ripple in a long storm of suffering? But you don't need parchment to know this. You are no longer a forgotten shadow scraping a plow through frozen earth. You are someone who stood, someone who learned to read, someone who carved a piece of truth into their life and dared to keep it. One day, your father gives you a key. You don't know what it opens. He doesn't remember either. But he says, "It belonged to your grandfather. Thought you might want it." You hang it by the door, not because of what it unlocks, but because of what it represents. That someday someone may want to unlock your story too. You lie in bed that night, Elena's head on your shoulder, the fire dancing low. Outside, an owl hoots. Your baby sister snores gently from the other side of the room. Your pig, hopefully, dreams of glory. And you? You sleep, knowing your hands helped build something that might just last longer than you. Something stubborn. Something honest. Something good.
The air grows quiet now. The wind softens to a hush that brushes against the wooden beams above your head. Somewhere outside, a dog gives a tired little yawn and curls tighter into its straw bed. The fire has settled. No more crackling, just the occasional pop. Like the hearth itself is falling asleep beside you. Your breathing slows, your body nestled in the rhythm of another day survived. You remember the soil under your fingernails, the weight of a sack over your shoulder, the way Elena's hand fits yours even when she's dreaming. You remember the way snow melts from a fence post, how bread tastes better when you know it came from your own flour, how sweet spring air feels after too many months of cold silence. And you remember truth,
not the kind written in scrolls or argued in Latin, but the quiet kind, the kind that grows in garden beds and lingers in lullabies, the kind that says, "You were here. You mattered. And though history might forget your name, your hands shaped something real." You turn on your side, eyes fluttering shut. Outside, the stars blink gently, faint candles in the sky, watching over your world with quiet wonder. There's no more to do tonight. No fields to plow, no taxes to dodge, no feasts to prepare, no battles to brace for. Just this moment, just this breath, just sleep. Sweet, earned, deep. Good night, peasant of Bohemia. You did well.